What's going on YouTube? This week's topic is gender therapy. This is a pretty significant, important topic that could potentially help some guys out there. Here's a little bit of a backstory. When I was young, growing up, I always struggled with my gender identity. Even though I didn't know I was trans, everything kind of affected me, and it all kind of formed into place that it was resorting back to the fact that I was trans, but I didn't know yet. I had a lot of social problems growing up. I had a lot of self-loathing, a lot of self-hate. I really went through a depressing stage of my life in high school and middle school, especially when I was hitting puberty, because I was confused and I felt alone, and everything just felt as if the world was kind of crumbling on me. My mother had no idea I was trans, but she always knew something was up with me because I wasn't like the rest of the girls. Something was really bothering me, and in retrospect, looking back, I knew it was that I was trans, but I had no idea what was going on with me, so it was just a really frustrating time. My mother offered to take me to gender therapy even when I was younger, in like middle school, high school. I kept saying no over and over and over and over again because I always put a negative connotation with therapy. When people think of therapy, they think of kind of like the scene in Donnie Darko, if you've ever seen that movie, where Donnie is laying on the bed and the therapist is talking to him about his dreams and his visions of the world ending, and you just kind of think of somebody sitting in a chair taking down notes and someone else sitting back. Therapy is usually seen as kind of a taboo. I always referred to therapy as a negative thing. That is not the case by any means. I really do wish that I went to gender therapy sooner than I did. I felt like it would have saved me a lot of confusion in the future. It would have helped me out a great deal because everything was kind of collapsing on me and I had no idea what was going on. But it was just a very frustrating time for me in my life. I started gender therapy when I was 18 years old, about 3 or 4 weeks before my 19th birthday. That's when I started. The reason why I started gender therapy was for two reasons. Number one, I wanted to transition once I was out of the military. Number two, I wasn't able to talk about being trans because I was in the army, and I had to talk to somebody about it or else I was going to explode. I kept a lot of my inner feelings to myself because I wasn't allowed to be trans, so everything kind of closed in on me and I felt like I was being crushed in. I just had to go to someone to talk to them because it was getting very difficult to cope with my feelings. Oh man, that was a messy, tough time in my life. Gender therapy was extremely helpful for me. I thought it was really cool. I went to gender therapy down in Atlanta, Georgia, in Midtown Atlanta, which is like a major transgender metropolitan area. I don't know why. There's a lot of trans people in the Atlanta area, which is pretty cool because they helped me out a lot when I was first coming out as trans because I lived down there. My therapist was extremely cool. She was kind of like one of those hippie, liberal, let's recycle everything kind of women. She was from, I think, Portland, Oregon or Seattle, Washington, and she was just very much in the culture of being liberal and all that stuff. I didn't really feel nervous about starting gender therapy, but I still, when I started it, had that negative connotation of therapy in my mind. I was hard on myself for going to therapy, which was really dumb because I needed it to help me transition and help me get out my feelings. My gender therapist, like I said, was awesome. She made it a really comfortable environment for me. I remember there was like a significant amount of couches and chairs and stuff in her office. She always played like this soothing music that you would hear on one of those internet radio stations, like the go to sleep music. It was like sounds of rocks going down like a river, and like waves crashing in the ocean. It was just really cool. She set up this really comfortable environment for me. I did gender therapy for 8 months before she gave me my green light to start transitioning. The reason why I did it for so long was because I was in the military and I was not able to transition. Because of that, I feel like I could have gotten my T letter and stuff sooner, but I had a set date of when I could physically start taking my hormone injections. So because of that, I went to therapy a little bit longer. I believe it was 7 or 8 months, now thinking about it. I'm pretty bad at math and I don't feel like counting on my fingers right now. My therapist was really phenomenal. At the time, I was in a long relationship with a woman, and I brought her into therapy with me, and like we would talk as a couple too with our relationship and all that. My therapist let me bring friends, and I brought a friend with me once. Like I said, I went to gender therapy for a while, so we had a lot of different segments and sessions. I guess sessions is the right word, not segments. But I remember specifically certain days we would talk about different aspects of my transition. When we first would sit down together for either the hour and a half or the 2 hours that we were talking, she would begin by asking me events going on in my life. There was one day where we went through my childhood and how I figured out that I was trans. There were other days we talked about just my family. I had other sessions where I talked about my dysphoria. We went really all the way back at one point and talked about like even dysphoria when I was really a little peanut. She went really into like the depths of my soul about transitioning. She suggested me books and documentaries on my transition and such. And actually my therapist is like a really kind of big deal in the trans community, and she's close friends with she's close friends with Dr. Garamoni and all these top surgeons and all this stuff, so she had tons to say about everything, and she was just a big deal, and she went to all the Philly Health Trans Conference and all this stuff, so she was she was so helpful. If anyone is watching this for some reason and you're in the Atlanta area, just message me and I will definitely give you as much information as I can, because she was phenomenal. My therapist also set out like this comfortable vibe where if I felt as if something was too uncomfortable for me to talk about, we didn't have to talk about it. When it came time to her writing me a letter for my tea, she handed it to my doctor, who was in Atlanta because she was friends with him, and she set me up with my doctor because she knew him too. So I didn't even have to like bring the letter to the doctor because she did everything for me. My letter to start tea was kind of like a background letter on how I've had dysphoria and I've been dealing with it most of my life. It was about my urge to transition and also how I was emotionally ready to transition from female to male. The letter went into very deep detail. It was addressed in my birth name with parentheses my name that I went by, because legally I didn't change my name yet. This is like probably, wow, this was a while before I actually changed my name. So it was really, she was very helpful. I also got a letter of Carrie. At the time when I first started transitioning, I was leaving Georgia to come to New York to like visit friends and family, and I was in this weird state where I wasn't 100% passing as male, and I could have been mistaken for a female, and I didn't change my name or my gender on my license. So my therapist wrote me a letter of Carrie to write around. I'm gonna read this out to you with like bleeping out some personal or important stuff. It says, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is blah blah blah. I am a therapist in Atlanta, Georgia with a specialization practice in gender identity and transition counselor for gender variant persons, and particularly biologically born females with masculine identities. This letter is to serve verification that my client, Joe Wimple, aka blah blah blah, because that was my birth name, is a transgender individual in the process of medical treatment to transition from the gender assigned at birth to male and is under my care in Atlanta, Georgia. It is the purpose of the letter to ensure that Mr. Wimple will be allowed safe passage through every space. And it goes on to say, during transitioning, this person may present with a mixture of both male and female secondary sex characteristics, i.e. body hair, facial contours, tone of voice, distribution. I don't know what is wrong with me today. Fat distribution, which may leave some observers uncomfortable or confused as to which gender this person belongs to. This is normal during this time and must be allowed as this person makes transitions to male gender. Those legal documents still indicate that he is female. However, since Joe identifies as a male transgender individual, he should be afforded the same basic human rights as any other male, such as having access to male restrooms. While this person identifies as transgender, this is no implication on his mental stability or competence. Joe is a highly functioning and emotionally stable individual. In order to authenticate this letter, indeed, for the person before you, a description of Mr. Wimple is included as follows. And she just kind of put down how I looked, so in case there was any issue, this is me. It pretty much goes on to say that I'm Caucasian, 5 foot 3 inches tall, around 120 pounds, short brown cropped hair and glasses. That's a basic description of me. His date of birth is blah blah blah. Mr. Wimple is certainly undergoing medical care for a transgender condition. I appreciate the professional treatment that you will afford to Mr. Wimple, and I thank for you in advance. So I think the letter of travel was really cool, because at this time I was flying around under my birth name, and I had like that weird social anxiety, like, is anyone going to stop me? Is anyone going to say anything? Blah blah blah. So that kind of let things even out a little bit and helped me out with all that. My therapist also wrote a letter to my top surgeon, but that's somewhere deep down in the archives. I have like a notebook of all my stuff, and that's like in the other room. So this letter was the closest one to me right now, and I'm feeling pretty lazy, so I don't want to dig that up. But it's not too exciting. I feel like the letter of travel was the most significant one because I used to carry it with me everywhere. Now that my license is male and my name is Joe on all my documents, I don't really carry it as much with me anymore. My birth certificate still says female, so for some reason, if I have to use my birth certificate for some reason, which I probably won't, then I'll carry that letter, bang, bang, boom, but right now, I don't really need it. In conclusion to everything I have said, I was very nervous about gender therapy because I always put a negative connotation in front of therapy. It really, 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 really helped me out a lot. I was able to express how I was feeling because my gender therapist had all these connections in the trans world. I got a lot of insight on things, and I met actually some pretty cool people because of my gender therapist, so I'm very, very appreciative. Not a lot of dudes out there are in a metropolitan area like Atlanta where they can go to a specific gender therapist. One of my close friends from high school actually transitioned at the same time as me from female to male. He was going to a regular therapist on his college campus. The regular therapist helped him out a great deal as well. Specifically, you don't need to go to a gender therapist to transition. You could go to any therapist as long as they are understanding and respectable of the whole trans issue. Just felt like it was easier for me to go to a gender therapist because I was in a metropolitan area, she was available, I was referred to by a friend, and it just really worked out. But it is not by any means necessarily significant to just go to a specific therapist for gender. Any therapist that makes you comfortable will work with you to write your letter for hormones and surgery and all that. Gender therapy is nothing to be afraid of. I promise you, I was intimidated at first, but it helped me out such a great deal. I'm forever appreciative of my therapist. I moved far, 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 far from Atlanta, but I still keep in touch with her, and I still constantly thank her for everything that she's done for me, because when I first started therapy, I was so lost and I was confused and nervous about everything. One major thing that my therapist noticed about me when I transitioned was I had this like really long gap of seeing my therapist. I saw my therapist for the last time when I was 2 weeks on T and my voice started to like slowly drop and I had like pizza face acne on my face and I was preparing for top surgery. I ended up leaving to go to New York for about like 2 months, came back to Georgia, and then I was like moving to New York for good, so I wanted to say goodbye to my therapist. So I came and sat with her, and it was like I was transitioned in a way. I was passing as male and I had my top surgery and all that stuff, and I sat down with her and she looked at me and she was like, "I'm so proud of you, you look so great, blah blah blah." And she told me that I was acting a lot more relaxed and a lot less anxious. Apparently when I used to sit on the sofa and she used to talk to me, I used to bite my nails and tap my foot and I was very jittery and nervous. She told me that I seemed like a different, more relaxed person now, which is awesome. So I am forever grateful for all the time she sat with me and all the times I think I potentially cried in her chair because I was just so sensitive and I felt like the world was coming down and crushing me. I really lucked out with my gender therapist, but like I said, you do not need to go to a specific therapist for gender. Anyone that makes you comfortable will work with you. And don't be afraid to not respond to any questions if you don't feel comfortable responding to them. Remember also that when you see a therapist, everything is confidential. Everything. If anybody is in the Atlanta area and needs any advice on transitioning, I did everything in Atlanta, so I'm gonna leave my Tumblr down there so you can let me know if you need any sort of help with that.